TELUS. Welcome to TELUS House Ottawa. TELUS has been a sponsor of Media Awareness Network and now MediaSmarts for many years, and we're very proud to host this fascinating event this morning where we're going to learn about young Canadians in a wired and increasingly wireless world.
I can't tell you what a privilege it is and how much fun it is to work on this research project. It's just been phenomenal. We've been in the field 3 times, and one of the real benefits of the Young Canadians research, which is the first project of its kind in the world, and is still one of the largest projects of its kind in the world, is it's given us a chance to track changes in kids' digital lives. To put it in perspective, when we started this project, it was 1999, you would have been 4, you would have been 3, and you would have been a glimmer in someone's eye. It's also, I think, a very important study because it's given the adults who are concerned about kids' well-being online a chance to test our assumptions, and also a chance to sit back and evaluate how well our interventions to date have been working, or perhaps how they haven't been working as well as we would like. And I could spend a lot of time telling you about this project and the findings, but we thought the most appropriate way of just giving you an overview of some of the things that we've discovered is to introduce you to some of the experts that we talk about. So we're going to start with our panel, who will now introduce themselves. Do you want to start over at your end, Theo?
Okay, I'm Theo Etzinger, and I'm 11 years old. I go to St. George Catholic School, and yeah.
And that's Theo.
I'm Alex. I am 15. I go to Glebe Collegiate Institute, and I think that's about it.
My name is Natasha. I'm 16 and I go to Untitled High School.
I'm Val, and I'm really old, and I work at U of O. As Jane and Kathy indicated, ever since we first started this project, it became quite clear, and I know it's no news to anyone in the room, that kids tend to be early adopters of online technologies. Back in 1999 and 2000, when we first started tracking kids' use of these kinds of technologies, the adults in their lives really felt that these kinds of communication tools would help them learn and would help prepare them for the marketplace of the future. And, you know, kids do use it for their homework sometimes, but they've deeply embedded it into their social relationships with each other. And one of the things that's been most fascinating about this project is that every time we go into the field, we learn something new and really unexpected. For example, I was telling our panel here that when we talked to kids in 2011, we said, what's the best thing about the internet? And they said, trolling. And then we said, what's the worst thing about the internet? And they said, trolling. And I said, what the heck is trolling? So Theo's going to start us off by giving us a bit of an insight into what kids do when they're trolling.
Trolling is sort of being scammed online or pranked or stuff like that. Like once I was playing a game called the Troll Face game, and you had to click a start button, and there was this one flashing, so I clicked on it and it went to an 80s video of this guy singing a song from the 80s.
Rick Astley.
And,
give you up.
And I had just been trolled.
Yeah.
So it's just pretty much being pranked.
Being pranked. Natasha, what do you like about trolling?
I think that when people troll me and the fact that I fall for it, that's what I enjoy, because I think I should be smarter and not fall for it. And it's funny.
One of the things we found when we were looking at these kinds of results is that often when you talk to adults, they see that as spamming and scamming. But kids see it as a way of developing and improving their mastery over the environment. Actually, that's exactly what we heard from our focus group participants. This was a way that they could test how savvy they were online. And then they could poke fun at their friends when they kind of fell for the trick. But it also gave them an opportunity to become more in the know, more comfortable with the technology itself. So one of the things we've seen is that kids have readily adopted these technologies as ways of meeting their developmental needs. And another technology which has really flourished because of the way kids use them is social networking. And again, I don't think that's any surprise to anyone in the room. But if you think about it, older teens typically are developing and experiencing their identities, experimenting with their identities through a sense of connection. So that Facebook web of people makes it clear that, you know, here are my 12 closest friends and here are the 30 people I know, is really conducive to that developmental stage of finding your place in the world. Now, younger teens tend to play with their identities through performativity. Anyone who has a preteen or an early teen knows, you know, they come down and you think, no, you're not wearing that to school. It's dressing up, trying on new identities, experimenting with popular culture things that you see out there to try and figure out what it is to live in an adult world. Now, often policymakers and adults see these kinds of activities as a danger. For example, I'd asked the panel before, if you were going to sum it up in one word, what's the rule about the internet? Alex, why don't we start with you?
Don't talk to people you don't know, basically.
Okay.
In general.
Theo, what do you think?
Don't give out personal information.
Natasha?
Everything they said.
Yeah. Don't talk to strangers. Don't tell anybody who you are. Don't tell anybody where you are. But if you think about the developmental needs kids are meeting, well, that's the opposite. They want to be able to identify each other because they need to talk to each other, and they want to be able to explore the adult world because that's how they learn how to become an adult. Now, Theo, I actually wanted to start with you again because policymakers, as I said, often see these kinds of things as dangerous. And so we typically, over the last 12 years, have put kids under some kind of surveillance in order to protect them from these dangers of meeting strangers. So schools have blocking mechanisms in place so they can't get to certain sites. There are keystroke captures, all sorts of software out there that's being sold particularly to parents so they can basically spy on their kids. So Theo, I wanted to ask you about your Facebook page. How long have you had your Facebook page?
Just like 2 months, and I'm 2 years too young to have it, but over 50% of the people in my class have it, and it's pretty new to me.
Okay. What do you use it for?
Talking to my friends and staying connected.
Okay. Do you do this in school?
Not really, but if I wanted to, I could.
So if you wanted to, what would you do?
You can download Google Chrome, a web browser, and then go to the free app store and download the Facebook extension. You click on it, and then you click go to full site, and you can get past the block.
Pretty easily, eh? And
It's quite easy.
Does that kind of information flow among your grade 6 class pretty easily too? Yeah. You also had a really interesting example about the school internet password.
A lot of my friends have iPods, and they have been able to figure out the Wi-Fi password for our school, and they'll bring their iPods to school and use their iPods sometimes even in class.
Okay, so typically as adults we've thought we've got to protect kids from these technologies, and we use these kinds of filters and barriers to make sure that they're protected from those strangers. One of the things that we've learned from kids consistently is it just doesn't work, they just go around them. Before we talk to the kids and the parents this particular phase of Young Canadians, I did a series of interviews with 10 key informant teachers across the country actually. And it was pretty clear that from the teacher's perspective, these filters and keystroke monitors also were shutting down opportunities to use these technologies to really deepen kids' educational experience. Particularly because it meant that when they're out there, if they do come across something that is questionable, they're on their own. There isn't an adult in the room, not necessarily spying on them, but just there to say, hey, what's up with that? So I wanted to give you an example that was raised by the high school teacher in the north that we talked to. He's negotiated a relationship with his school where he has pretty open access to online technologies in his classroom. And he's kind of rearranged his classroom so he's sort of in the middle and the kids are around it and everybody's working on different projects at different times. And he had given them some research to do, so a number of them were going to the library, a number of them were looking at books in the classroom, and a number of them went on the internet. And he walks up and he's just kind of chatting to the kids. Kids, hey, Mr. So-and-so, we found this really cool site. He walks over, and he looks at it, and after about 2 minutes he realizes it's a hate site. It purports to be an educational site, but it's actually a highly racist, hateful site. And instead of saying to the kids, shut down that computer and logging off and punishing them in some way or trying to control their access, he said, oh, that's really interesting. Look at paragraph 1. Why don't you read that out loud? And they read it and they don't really notice anything. And he said, hey, what do you think about that? It took them about 10 minutes to figure out that this was a hate site. And what they loved the best about it was that he knew before they did. So there was some trick to it, something he knew that they didn't know, and it led to this really interesting day-long exploration of how you can authenticate information online, how you can identify hateful material. And his argument to us is that if we rely on barriers to keep kids off these technologies, then they won't have adults around to help them navigate those kinds of issues, and those teachable moments are lost. One of the across the country, there was one parent and a couple of kids who talked about a very different kind of relationship with their children when it came to managing their kids' online lives. And Alex, actually, you're a really good example of that kind of approach. When you're online, you know, are your parents watching you all the time, or how does it work?
Not always. Sometimes. Well, first of all, they both have Facebook accounts, so that's how they keep track of my internet usage. Sometimes they use the more of a manual way, which is they stare over my shoulder half the time. A lot of the times they try to make it casual, but no, it's not casual. Sit down and say, "Alex, what are you doing?" "I'm on the computer." "I know. What are you doing?" Just general kind of stuff. I think they've gotten smarter though. Now they try to make it more like, I didn't look. What are you talking about? But no, they try to keep it friendly. They don't try to make it look like they're spying on me or anything. They just want to make sure I'm okay and I'm not like conversing with someone who I should not be conversing with.
Are they good with Facebook? Are they really savvy with it?
No.
What about their passwords?
They don't know their password.
Who do they go when they have trouble with that kind of stuff?
Me.
Even though your parents are kind of keeping a benign eye on you in the background, do they know everything you're doing?
I don't think so.
What kind of things do you do to keep your online life private?
Well, seeing as the only way they can find out what I'm doing is by checking over my shoulder, I try to keep more personal things about me and my friends that my friends put online. I just avoid that kind of stuff whenever they're around. Mm-hmm. And maybe things that they would find a tad inappropriate, I also avoid that whenever they're around.
Why do you think kids need that kind of privacy online?
I guess it's just kind of like their lives, and even I think it's the same way that like parents will ask about like say a boyfriend or a girlfriend. It's kind of like the same thing as asking about like what they're doing online. It's like, this is my life. You don't need to know everything. I don't really know, but no, something like that.
No, that's great. That's a really clear message we got from all of our focus groups. That especially the kids whose parents were spying on them and spying on them aggressively talked about it as a breach of trust. One young woman, for example, said, you know, my mom trusts me if I'm talking to a guy at the grocery store, but if I'm talking to a guy online, she just goes crazy. And I wish she would just trust me. You know, there was this real sense that that kind of surveillance made it really difficult for kids to get the kind of privacy they need to, you know, start to develop their own sense of independence and their own sense of autonomy from the family unit. And the relationships that worked the best were actually very similar to the one that Alex just described, where parents you know, are keeping a watchful eye. They're around. They don't necessarily know everything that's going on, but at the same time, if something happens, they have a relationship based on trust with their kids, and their kids feel comfortable going to them when they know they need some heavy intervention. Another real shift that's kind of interesting over the last 12 years that we found in our research is that in 1999-2000, adults typically talked about kids at risk because of the internet. There's been a real move in our latest collection of data where people started to talk about kids as risk. And I think that came up most clearly in the bullying discourses, concerns about cyberbullying. So the concern isn't just that they'll meet a stranger who might do something that's dangerous for my child. It's that if you give kids these technologies, they will use it to be mean. And certainly there's been, as you know, a real emphasis on anti-cyberbullying policies both in school and in the general public and the general media. There have been large discussions about that. So Natasha, I know you use Facebook. So how long have you been on Facebook?
Since I was in grade 7, so about 4 years ago.
Yeah, and what do you use it for?
Pretty much just talk with my friends or like photo sharing, and I just find the system for chatting is like better than everything else, so that's why I use it.
Yeah. Now, is this who are you chatting with most of the time? Kids in school?
Yeah, like my close friends or family even.
Okay. Have you ever been approached by someone you didn't know on Facebook?
Yes.
Yeah, and can you tell us an example of that and how you handled it?
Yeah, there's someone who looked about like he was in his 30s. Messages me, asks me for like my number. I just first I ignored it, and afterwards when he was persisting, I just blocked him and I ignored it again.
And that was really consistent. A lot of the kids we talked, in fact, all of the kids we talked to across the country had very clear strategies about how to deal with strangers. And first it was ignore it. If it doesn't go away, you block them, and then that's sort of the end of it. The other thing that came up a lot in our discussions, especially with the high school girls, was how Facebook can lead to a lot of drama, particularly because you are talking to all your closest friends from school and all that type of thing. Have you ever experienced that kind of situation where there's an argument going on online or whatever?
Well, not really, but you see people if they disagree on things and they just start off an argument about it throughout the comments and inboxing.
So what kind of strategies would you use to deal with that kind of meanness or bullying behavior?
I guess I would confront them and be straightforward, because if you just talk about it online, it won't really lead anywhere.
So when you confront them, where do you confront them?
The chance I get, like at school, I guess.
So face to face?
Yep.
So what's the benefit of confronting someone who's doing that face to face, do you think?
At least they see that you care enough to solve whatever it is, because you're like taking the time to talk to them and confront them about it. So it's better than just typing up what you want to say.
Okay. And again, that's very, very typical of the kinds of conversations we had when we were collecting our data. Typically, kids have very clear strategies of how to deal with cyberbullying. First, you ignore it. If it doesn't go away, then you confront the person, face to face. Do you go to your parents?
No. Well, unless I've never went to my parents, but I mean, if somebody finds they can't really handle it, then they should probably consult someone, and their parents, I guess, is.
Yeah, and again, that was part and parcel of the strategy. I handle it on my own. Kids are mean. I need to know how to deal with it. And if I do have a conflict with someone, the best way is to just confront them face to face and see if I can resolve it. And certainly if I can't, then the parents came in as the heavy guns. They were the ones you could trust that would be there to help you figure out what your next steps were. We had really interesting conversations about some of the cyberbullying programs that are being offered in schools. And I was wondering if what your experiences have been with those kinds of things. How about we start with you, Alex?
I think I saw my first cyberbullying thing back in, I think it was either grade 7 or grade 8. And at that point it was interesting, it was new, because I've never seen a cyberbullying thing before. I've never actually heard of cyberbullying. So that was pretty cool. But as you go through the years, you get up to 3 or 4 each year. And by the time you reach grade 9, after 2 to 3 solid years of the same thing over and over and over again, it just has no effect on you. So they work better on people who haven't seen them before, but on people who have seen them a lot, they the whole concept. I know what happens online, and whatever you're doing now isn't helping at all. So I'm just going to tone you out. So essentially, they don't really work anymore.
Natasha, what's your experience with those kind of things?
They don't work for us either, because they just talk to you about it, but then people who are experiencing it, it's not like they're helping them, they're just informing them that it's there. So I don't see how repeating the same thing over and over again year after year is going to help really.
Okay. Theo, you're younger. Have you heard this a number of times too?
Well, for me, it's not so much cyberbullying, but what I hear about the cyberbullying sounds the same as our bullying, just straight out bullying program, and it's sort of over and over every year, just the same talk, and after a while nobody really pays that much attention. Although this year we did see a cool video about it, but other than that, everyone sort of tones it out.
Mm-hmm. A number of the kids we talked to when we were doing our focus group work indicated that there was this real sense of, over and over and over again, we've heard it, we don't want to hear it anymore. But there was a sense too among a number of the children that we talked to, or young people we talked to, that it was really problematizing things for them. that they felt that when they were just online and they were chatting with each other on Facebook, they would talk to each other in ways that adults around them might think was being mean, but it was just the way they were talking. So they felt there was this real tendency to pathologize just their everyday communications. Two young women in Toronto, for example, they were 13 and 14. They told how they were both of African descent, and they were comparing their tans after one of them had been down south and one of them hadn't been. And they were threatened with suspension because that was bullying each other. And they just kind of rolled their eyes and said, man, you guys are just completely out to lunch. There was this sense that adults had become hypersensitive to these types of things. And it was becoming increasingly difficult for kids to use these technologies to keep in touch with their friends and to get the benefits that our panelists have been talking about. So just to sum it up, I think the strongest message we got from our research at this phase is that kids actually are resilient about the kinds of risks that adults are concerned about. They have very clear strategies for dealing with strangers. They have very clear strategies for dealing with cyberbullying and those kinds of conflicts online. Secondly, the kind of surveillance that's being used both within schools and within the home to protect them from these dangers are really annoying them. They can get around them, but they're putting in the position where they feel like they're criminals, you know, like nobody trusts me to do anything. And then when I do have a problem, one of the real problems they raise is that if I do have a problem and I want to go to a teacher that I trust, zero tolerance policies tie the school's hands, and it escalates. So when there is a problem of resolving conflict, by going to the school, they feel they lose control. There was one young man who was 17 in Toronto who had been involved in gangs in Toronto, and he had gotten out of that gang, and he said, if I had gone to my school, I'd be dead now. And he meant it. Because of that zero tolerance policy, he was cut off from the adults who knew him best and could actually counsel him and help him navigate through that particular conflict. So I think it's a very clear message to us that we need to really seriously rethink the approaches that we're taking to helping kids manage the risks online. Another very clear message from the kids we talk to is that what works are relationships of trust, where kids feel that they can trust their parents to give them enough space and enough privacy that they don't know everything about them, but they know they're there when they need them and they can come in and help them deal with conflict if it gets beyond what's manageable or comfortable for the child. The last thing that's really quite interesting, especially because if you go back to '99 and 2000, ostensibly, we wanted to wire up kids because we wanted to make it better for them, easier for them to learn. And through our research, it's become quite clear that that's where we've let them down the most. Many of the kids that we talked to said that they were unprepared to use this technology well for the purposes of their own learning. They have very weak search strategies. They do not use this technology. It's not embedded in their learning processes. So again, strong message from young people that adults need to really be creative and think about the best ways that we can support their online lives and help them maximize the benefits of these technologies.